Everyone. Let me get this shared. Okay. So like Coach Dudley said, today we are going to be talking about soccer. So who here has ever played, watched, or just liked soccer? Feel free to raise your hand. Okay, so Bianca. Bianca, did you play soccer? Feel free to either unmute or put it in the chat.
Yeah, I played.
Oh, okay. Nice. I also have played soccer most of my youth. Has anyone else played soccer or watched soccer, like soccer?
Yeah, me.
Who was that? Sorry, I couldn't hear. Okay. Okay, I will give a little bit just to see if anyone else puts anything in the chat, to say if they've either played soccer or, watched soccer, like it, any of the above. I have played, coached, and been a referee before in soccer. Soccer was kind of my life when I was younger. It was mainly what I did, sports-wise. So now we're going to talk about the origin of soccer. So the origin of soccer is kind of interesting. Records trace soccer back more than, 2,000 years ago to ancient China. I'm going to pause 1 second. Let's see. Okay, Dolce plays soccer and Brian plays competitive soccer. Okay. I think I played competitive soccer once for the winter. Do you play for teams locally? Okay, Dolce plays for the school. Nice. We're all hoping we get to have sports this year, so then you'll get to play again this year. Okay, so we will, I'll go back to talking about the origin of soccer. So like I said, records trace back to more than 2,000 years ago to ancient China. However, Greece, Rome, and parts of Central America, they also claim that they started soccer. However, England is the one who's transitioned soccer into like the game we all know it today. England is given credit for rules like forbidding tripping opponents, and touching the ball with your hands. And also, some little notes I put in here. As the sport of soccer has developed, more rules have been added. And in a lot of areas of the world, soccer is called football. Just like in the U.S., we call, like what Coach Dudley coaches, football. Some parts of the world do call soccer what like Dolce and Brian and Bianca play soccer. So, there is that little bit that can be sometimes a little confusing, but just note that some parts of the world do call soccer football. So here's a brief history of football. In 1891, the penalty kick was introduced. So if you trip someone or, something like that, we will go over that a little bit more next week. Then if you trip someone, they do get a free kick. They call it a penalty kick. In 1913, FIFA became a member of the International Football Association Board of Great Britain. And in 1970, during the World Cup finals, red and yellow cards were introduced. And red and yellow cards, that is something, again, we will discuss a little bit more in depth next week. But if you do like a serious penalty, you can get a red card. If you trip someone, spit on someone, kind of various offenses, you can get a red or yellow card. And those aren't things that you want to get. In 1992, goalkeepers were banned from handling deliberate back passes. So sometimes what will happen in soccer, or what would happen in soccer, is the defender will pass the soccer ball back to the goalie, and then goalies used to pick it up with their hands because they do have the capability to do that, but now that's not a thing. It's not fair. It's just not something that goalies are allowed to do anymore. In 1988, tackles from behind became a red card offense. So like I said, we'll learn more about red cards next week. But if you get a red card, you basically are kind of kicked out of the game. They're like, you're either playing a little too aggressive, or you're just being very unsportsmanlike, and you're just going to be kicked out of the game for the rest of the game. So now we are going to go over what a soccer field looks like. All fields and courts you play on all look different, so it's important to kind of go over them. So here we have the long lines of the rectangular soccer field are called touch lines. And the shorter lines of the rectangular field are called goal lines. This will become a little bit more important when we talk about the rules, some like rules of soccer. So just remember that the longer lines are the touch lines, the shorter lines are the goal lines. And on the goal line you have the goal. You have a 6-yard goal box, and then you have an 18-yard penalty box. And in the penalty box, you have a penalty spot, and then you also have the penalty arc. So if someone gets tripped in here and they get a penalty kick, then they will take their penalty kick at the penalty spot. And during a penalty kick, everyone is outside of the penalty box, and it's kind of nice to have this penalty arc, because then you don't really have people, rushing in as quickly after you kick the soccer ball. Something else that is important is you have this halfway line. So when at kickoff, you have one team on this side and you have one team on that side. And you have this center circle, so during kickoff, the team who has the soccer ball at kickoff gets to be inside this center circle on their half. And then the soccer ball will be placed at the center spot. And then at the corners is the last thing we'll go over about the field. You have corner flags, which is where the goal line and the touch lines meet. And then you have the corner arc. So if a defender accidentally kicks the ball over the goal line, then the other team will be able to take a corner kick, and that will be done in the corner arc. Let's see. Now I'm going to talk about soccer positions. Like I said in this diagram, some parts of the world do call it football, and some parts of the world also do call it, instead of saying a soccer field, they call it the pitch. So throughout this unit, if you see either the word football or the pitch, those are kind of words that can be kind of interchanged with either soccer, or like the pitch can be interchanged with the field. I'll make sure to note that as well. So you have forwards. The main role of a forward is to score goals. Sometimes forwards are called strikers. It just kind of depends. And then you also have midfielders. Midfielders play in the middle. They help defend, and they also help try to get the soccer ball to the forwards. So they kind of play an offensive and defensive position. They do generally a lot of running. You also have defenders, and their main role is to stop the other teams from scoring goals. They are kind of like the last line of defense before the goalkeeper. And then the goalkeeper is the only one that can use his or her hands in the penalty area, and they try to stop goals. So inside what we just went over, this penalty box, the goalkeeper can use their hands. Outside of this penalty box, if the goalkeeper uses their hands, it is considered a handball. They have their designated areas. And in this diagram, the tactic that this team is using is what they call a 4-4-2. So they'll have 4 defenders, 4 midfielders, and 2 forwards. And there are other tactics. We will look at those in a minute, but at this time I'm going to ask, so Brian, Dolce, or I think Bianca, you also responded that you played soccer. What positions do any of you play? I used to play defender and goalkeeper. Defense, okay. I play forward and midfield. Okay. So Bianca says she plays defense. And Brian says he plays forward and midfield. I occasionally, if we needed someone to, I would play midfield, but mainly I would, like I said, play defense and goalkeeper. Okay, Dolce plays sweeper. Okay, that's a pretty good defensive position. If anyone else plays soccer, feel free to put in the chat positions you play. And while you are doing that, I am going to go over the one last thing we're going to talk about for today for soccer is another tactic you can use, or kind of like the lineup of soccer, is you can have what they call a 4-3-3. So you could have 4 defenders, 3 midfielders, and 3 forwards. It really just depends on the team, the tactics of the team. It's really up to like the coaches and the team to decide how they are going to have their lineup. You could even have 4 midfielders if you wanted and just 3 defenders. So you're able to switch it up. You just cannot have more than 11 players on the field. So that is 10 between your forward, midfielder, and defense, and then your goalie. So that is all I have for soccer. Does anyone have any comments, questions, anything they'd like to say about soccer before we move on? I'll give about a minute, see if anyone puts anything in the chat. Feel free to unmute yourself or raise your hand if you would like to speak.